Kings chapter 6. And as I said last week, we're going to do things a little bit different than we had. I've been studying more or less chronologically everything that had been happening in Judah and Israel. And it was supposed to be a study of the kings. So we starting last week, we started making it just a study of the kings. So in 2 Kings chapter 6, and we'll begin with verse 8, and I'm going to do a good bit of reading here, and then I'll make a few comments. 2 Kings chapter 6, beginning with verse 8, the king of Syria warred against Israel and took counsel with his servants, saying, in such and such a place shall be my camp. And the man of God sent unto the king of Israel, saying, beware that thou pass not such a place, for thither the Assyrians are come down. And the king of Israel sent to the place where the man of God had told him and warned him of, and hated himself there not once nor twice. Therefore the heart of the king of Syria was sore troubled for this thing, and he called his servants and said unto them, will you not show me which of us is for the king of Israel? And one of his servants said, none, my lord, O king. But Elisha, the prophet that is in Israel, telleth the king of Israel the words that thou speakest in thy bedchamber. And he said, go and spy where he is, that I may send and fetch him. And it was told him, saying, behold, he is in Dothan. Therefore sent he thither horses and chariots, and a great host, and they came by night and compassed the city about. I'm going to stop there. I was going to read on till verse 19, but I'm going to stop there because it kind of shifts gears a little bit there. Let's see what all happens here. The king of Syria warred against Israel. This has been going on for a while. Israel and a lot of their neighbors don't get along, pretty much like what we see nowadays. Anyway, and he took counsel, or in other words, he's talked it over with his servants here, saying, in such and such a place shall be my camp, or he was going to go here and set up things to capture the king of Israel, or to do damage to the army, or something like that. Howsoever, in verse 2, the man of God said unto the king of Israel, saying, beware that thou pass not such a place, for thither the Syrians are come down. He told him, he warned him. Now, I don't know if you remember, Jehoram was a bad king. He was a bad man. He did evil things. He wasn't as bad as his daddy, but he wasn't missing it much. Anyway, the man of God, when they had met before, he said, what have I to do with you? In other words, he didn't want anything to do with him. And now, after Jehoram was spared, and all of Israel and Edom, the armies were spared, and Moab was routed, now there is, I don't know whether there's an understanding there or something like that, but there's less animosity. Anyway, the Lord has told the man of God, Elijah, he said, you tell them where they're going to be. And the Lord kept him informed. And he says, not once or nor twice. However many times they changed spots. Like, well, let's go over here. Maybe we can catch them over here. And anyway, the Lord told Elisha, and Elisha sent and told the king. Anyway, the king still yet didn't trust. And he sent to the place where the man of God told him and warned him of. So he checked them out. And sure enough, that's where they were. And saved himself there not once nor twice. So multiple times. Therefore the heart of the king of Syria was sore troubled for this thing. And he called his servants and said unto them, will you not show me which of us is for the king of Israel. In other words, we've got a spy in the house. You know, which one of us is telling him this thing? You know, because we can't even get a look at him, let alone capture him. But what does one of the servants say? He says, "None, my lord. There's no spy here. But Elisha the prophet that is in Israel tells the king of Israel the words that thou speakest in thy bedchamber." In other words, there's no place you can hide that Elisha won't know. Now, the real thing is that God doesn't know. The real thing is that there's no place you can hide that God doesn't know. God doesn't see. God doesn't hear. And in this instance, he told Elisha, and Elisha told the king. So in verse 13, he said, "Go and spy where he is, that I may send and fetch him." In other words, capture him. He's not going to just ask him to come. He's going to capture him. And it was told him, saying, "Behold, he is in Dothan." So they told him where he was at. You know, okay, we're going to go get him. And therefore sent he thither horses and chariots. You know, to get one man. Horses and chariots and a great host. And they came by night, trying to sneak up on him and compass the city about. So here they are at Dothan. As far as I know, there's Elisha and his servant. I don't know of any others that were with him at this time. And the whole city is surrounded. No way out. Verse 15. And when the servant of the man of God was risen early and gone forth, behold, an host compassed the city, both with horses and chariots. And his servants said unto him, "Alas, my master, how shall we do?" What can we do? I mean, we're trapped. And there's a thing that always comes to mind when I read about things like this in the Bible. When somebody says, "That's another fine mess you got me in," you know. And here's the servant, and he's telling him, you know, what can we do? And what does Elisha say? "Oh no, we're captured. You know, there's nothing we can do." And he answered, verse 16, and he answered, "Fear not, for they that be with us are more than they that be with them." Now, there's two of them. There's the servant and there's Elisha. And the whole city is surrounded. It doesn't give an exact number or even, but just a multitude. There's a whole lot of people that are surrounded. And what does Elisha say? There'd be more with us or more than they that be with them. So, yeah, two against that. That's not true. It wasn't two against. And something we need to understand too, when we're surrounded, when there's evil all around us and things like that, and we wonder, what can we do? We need to remember there's more with us than there is with him. Always will be. Study a little bit in Job. All the things that he went through. And it went back to the beginning of Job, and the devil had to go and ask to lay his hand on Job. He has no power. The devil can't touch us without God's permission. Verse 16, verse 17, and Elisha prayed. Isn't that what we should do first? Something comes out and we worry, oh, I gotta figure this out. Well, maybe you do have to figure it out, but the first thing you need to do is pray, and that's what Elisha did. Elijah prayed and said, "Lord, I pray thee, open his eyes that he may see. Now, a lot of times we're just plain blind. Now, there's going to be a lot of blindness talk here in this particular chapter, and a lot of times we're blind. You know, we don't see the obvious. And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire round about Elisha. So, you don't mess with God's army. Now, we are supposed to be soldiers of the cross. We are supposed to be out doing a spiritual battle. I'm not talking about getting out and duking it up with somebody or anything like that, but we are in a spiritual battle. We should be out telling others of Christ and telling them what all he's done for us. But here's Elisha, and he's got a hedge around him, just like Job. Here's all these horses and stuff like that, and the young man's eyes were open, and he saw this. Can you imagine the confidence we would have if we just realized we're in that position every minute of every day? There's a hedge around us. Satan can't touch us. And if the Lord allows it and we have to go home, hey, amen. I'm ready to go. Can you think of any place better to be? Anyway, verse 18. And when they came down to him, Elisha prayed unto the Lord and said, Smite this people, I pray thee, with blindness. Now, he could have asked him to kill them all, but that's not what he said. Smite them with blindness. Now, this isn't a blindness where you can't see anything. This is a blindness where you can't see specific things. And he smote them with blindness according to the word of Elijah, he being God. So, according to what he asked. Now, sometimes we ask for things that are kind of silly. At one time, when I was younger, I wanted a Corvette, and I never did pray for a Corvette. I have prayed for a dependable vehicle. That it would be nice if the Lord decided he wanted to give me a Corvette, but that's up to him. We need to be careful what we ask for. But Elisha, he said, smite these people with blindness. And so that's what he did. And verse 19, and Elisha said unto them, This is not the way. He said to the Syrians, the Syrian army, he says, this isn't the way. You're getting in the wrong place. Neither is this the city. Follow me. And apparently they could still see something. But they couldn't tell that Elisha was Elisha. They couldn't tell that they were at the right city. They were at Dothan, and everything was where they were supposed to be according to them. Anyway, and he said, Follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom ye seek. Well, he was the man they were seeking. They had already found him. They just didn't realize it yet, because the Lord had closed their eyes to seeing him. But he led them to Samaria. So he's going to take the Syrian army, and he's going to take them right to where the army of Israel is, where the stronghold is, the capital city. Verse 19, and Elisha said unto them, oh, wait a minute, no, I was already read that. Anyway, so in verse 20, and it came to pass, when they were come into Samaria, that Elisha said, Lord, open the eyes of these men, that they may see, just like the servant. Open their eyes that they can see. They're going to see something different, though. It's not going to be something joyful. And the Lord opened their eyes, and they saw, and behold, they were in the midst of Samaria. In other words, they were surrounded. They were captured. Nowhere to go. So what happens? Verse 21, and the king of Israel said unto Elisha. Now you remember how Jehoram and Elisha, they didn't get along. And now here Elisha has helped out Jehoram in multiple instances. And anyway, Jehoram says unto Elisha, when he saw them, my father. He's showing him respect, which he didn't before. My father. Shall I smite them? Shall I smite them? In other words, he really wanted to smite them. That's not a word we use much anymore, getting smited or smitten or whatever. But he's showing him the proper respect you give a man of God. And he said, my father, shall I smite them? Shall I smite them? He's really wanting to smite them. He's got the whole Syrian army right there. They're surrounded, and he could wipe them out. But what does Elisha say? Verse 22, and he answered, thou shalt not smite them. In other words, they're captured. You don't, I'll read a little bit farther here. Wouldst thou smite those whom thou hast taken captive with thy sword and with thy bow? You see, you don't, somebody that's captured, they can't do anything else. You don't, I don't know, the term used to be, you don't kick a man when he's down, but anymore, they do. They just keep right on kicking. But what does he tell them to do? He says, set bread and water before them, that they may eat and drink, and go to their master. So he says, okay, you fix them something to eat, you give them some water to drink, and then you turn them loose. Let them go back to their master. So you would think, well, Jehoram's going to lose these marbles at this. Here he's got this great opportunity, and he's going to feed them and water them and send them home. And that's exactly what he did. Verse 23, and he prepared great provision for them. In other words, he didn't, I don't think he just fed them bread and water. I think he made meals for them. Something good to eat. And when they had eaten and drunk, he sent them away, and they went to their master. So the bands of Syria came no more into the land of Israel. Now, in other words, they didn't come for a while. Jehoram reigned for 12 years. So we don't know how long a period of time this was in between this and verse 24. But apparently there was at least a fairly good period of time here. And this is what happens. And it came to pass, verse 24, and it came to pass after this, that Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, gathered all his hosts and went up and besieged Samaria. Now, I don't know if you've got your maps yet that shows everything. If you'll look where it says Israel, I think it says, yeah. Right where it says Israel, if you go to the left, maybe 3/4 of an inch or so, there's a little star there. And it says Samaria. That's the capital city. And if you look over to where Syria was, now it's not on the map here, Syria, look where it says Aram on the map. And you can see Damascus up above it here. Well, this is Syria. Okay, so they came a long ways. And nobody was there to stop them. Nobody was there to slow them down. Nobody was there to spy them out or anything like that. It seems like they just showed up at the capital city and they were there. So the king had been kind of sleeping at the wheel. And so he besieged Samaria. And usually what happens when a city is under siege, unless they get help from outside, is once the siege starts, as long as the people outside want to hold the siege, there's no escape. You can't get out, and no help can get in, unless they're a strong enough force to do that. So in verse 25, and there was a great famine in Samaria, and behold, they besieged it until an ass's head was sold for 80 pieces of silver. Now I don't know if this would have been an abomination anyway, because first of all, the mule, donkey, whatever this is here, is not considered a clean beast. They were not to eat. And then the second thing is, it was his head. There's not going to be much meat on that head. And the third thing is, it was an ass's head. Who wants to eat an ass's head? I mean, they must have been really desperate. And it said, this is what was being sold for 80 pieces of silver, 80 pieces of silver. Now, it doesn't say specifically, but I believe, and Brother Gill agrees with me, that this is a shekel. So this was a really outlandish price for a dead animal's head. One that they weren't really supposed to eat anyway. And it gets worse. And the fourth part of a cab of dove's dung for 5 pieces of silver. Now, there's a whole lot of discussion and things about this. I don't know if I'm going to do some of it here anyway. Now, a cab is a unit of measure that I had never heard of before. And it is approximately what 24 eggshells will hold. I don't know where that came from, but that's what they say. 24 eggshells will hold a cab. Now, this is the fourth part of a cab. In other words, 6 eggshells of dove's dung for 5 pieces of silver. Now, there's a lot of discussion about what this was used for. Some people say this was for fuel. I'm not sure about that. I think it's probably wrong. And some say it was used for fertilizer to try to get something to grow. Others say it was specifically for food, either maybe even eaten directly, or whether it was gone through to get things that had passed through the dove and hadn't been digested. And the one that I tend to go with is it was something that wasn't actual dove's dung, but it was something that appeared to be, had the same appearance, like it was some kind of a mash of some kind or another, something like that. But it was still an outlandish price for it, 5 pieces of silver. In verse 26, and as the king of Israel was passing by upon the wall, there cried a woman unto him, saying, Help, my lord, O king. Now, I don't know what, because she figured she was really going to get any help or not. What's the king going to do? I mean, they were surrounded. They were under siege. really nothing he can do. And we already just read what the situation was, what kind of food they were buying, if they had money. And this woman, she sees the king walking along the wall around the city, and says, help my lord, O king. Now, you're not going to believe what happens next. I have said many times in Sunday school lessons and devotions and stuff like that, that you cannot think up anything so evil and vile that it's not being done every day. And this is going to prove it. Anyway, verse 27, and he said, if the Lord do not help thee, when shall I help thee? You know, this is the Lord. You know, if he won't help you, how do you expect me to? He's blaming all this on God. He said, am I supposed to get stuff out of the barn floor or out of the wine press? They're empty. There's nothing there. So he thinks about it, and he's in verse 28, and the king said unto her, what aileth thee? What's wrong? Like as if, everything's wrong. And she answered, I've read this multiple times before, and it's shocking. It's shocking. And she answered, this woman said unto me, give thy son, that we may eat him today, and we will eat my son tomorrow. Now, we all know the price of a good woman is far above rubies. There's nothing you could pay for a good woman. These obviously were not good women. But they were that desperate. This is how long this had been going on. Now maybe they thought in their minds, I don't know, the Bible doesn't say that, but maybe they thought in their mind that they were putting their children out of their misery, so to speak. But it sounds to me more like they were just interested in prolonging their own lives. Anyway, verse 29, so we boiled my son and did eat him. And I said unto her on the next day, give thy son that we may eat him. And she hath hid her son. So she's wanting the king to make this woman give up her son, this other woman, to give up her son so that they can eat him. And people say there's a spark of good in people. There's none. There's none. Verse 30, and it came to pass when the king heard the words of the woman, he went spastic. I don't think he could believe how far that his people had gone. That he rent his clothes and he passed by upon the wall. He tore his clothes. Now we had a discussion about this not that long ago, so I'm not going to go into that. But, and he says he passed by upon the wall. He had to get away from her. He couldn't believe it. He didn't want he didn't want to be there. Didn't want to hear any more of this. And the people looked, and behold, he had sackcloth within upon his flesh. Yeah, there's two things people disagree with on that. One is that he had sackcloth on because that's all there was. Now, I don't agree with that one, because his normal outer clothes would have been more comfortable than sackcloth being used for underwear. And the second one was that he was wearing sackcloth to humble himself. And I believe that's what that was for. And we're going to stop there. I wanted to go a little bit farther, but we're going to stop there. It's already 11 o'clock, so anyway, y'all stick around and listen up. Pastor's got a great message.